older than I look.
No, you look old.
He is old.
You need your eyesight checked.
All right, before this gets out of hand. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hope y'all had a great, wonderful week. I had an awesome week, a wonderful Christmas. Pastor Palmer joined us for the worship service at Harmony at Westcott, and it was really good. It was really nice, and good to see so many people there get to celebrate Christmas, and it was very nice, very, very beautiful service.
Pastor Jim or John? Jim or John?
Jim.
Oh, Jim.
Pastor Jim. Yep. So it was an awesome service, a lot of fun. He got to preach. That's the first time he's preached there, and he did good. I think he did well. I'm teasing. He did great, but nobody fell asleep on him. So that's always a good sign when you're at an assisted living facility and everybody stays awake. Pretty good indicator you got a good sermon going. So he did well. I hope each of you had a wonderful week as well. I do have a big class for us today. I'm hoping we can get through it all. Just to briefly tell you, my plan is I tried to fit it all into one class. It's just not possible. Just not possible. What we had left, so it's going to be 2, right? So it'll be this class and next week is my hope, provided we can get through it all quickly enough, and then we'll start our new class. I'll announce next week what our new subject matter will be, or our next endeavor to study, and I'll explain the rationale behind it as well. I think that God is directing us that way, and I'll show you why I believe that. But in any case, I'll announce that next week, and ultimately, hopefully we get through our lesson today. I was kind of teasing it with y'all a little bit this morning. It's a great lesson, a lot to learn from this. So I would suggest that it's also a good idea for you to study this more on your own. We're gonna swing through it really quick this morning. So I would suggest, as you have time yourself, to study these last few chapters of David's life. It's a great opportunity to learn some very important lessons. Not that we're not going to learn anything from it, but it's good if you would give it a little bit more time yourself. So before we begin, Dan was going to read the 10 Commandments for us, and then we'll get started after that with prayer and get everything going.
I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not have to thyself any graven images. Thou shalt not take name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. And thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And thou shalt not covet.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So with that, who will say a prayer for me? We'll get things started. Got it, Mike? All right.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for everything you do for us, and thank you for bringing us all together this class. We ask you to give Charles the strength and the wisdom to give us the word that we're anxiously looking forward to this study this morning. But then, thank you once again for everything and the blessings you continue to give us. All these things we say through your precious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. All right, so I got some decent jokes for you this morning. I think they're decent. I liked them. The third one, my daughter even laughed at, so that's usually a good sign. All right, so the first one, I'm convinced that my wife is an angel. She constantly tells me she doesn't have an earthly thing to wear, and she's always up in the air about something. Oh. That's the first one. All right, yeah, I figured I'd get a groan on that one. All right. Many have wondered, here's another one for you, I'll probably get a groan on. Many have wondered why it is that conservatives are called the right and liberals are called the left. Well, the answer, according to some people, is found right in the Bible, in Ecclesiastes 10:2, which says, the heart of the wise inclines to the right, but the heart of the fool to the left.
Yep.
All right.
Heard that
And
one before, yeah.
the joke that my daughter laughed at, an 80-year-old man went for his annual checkup, and the doctor told him, friend, for your age, you're in the absolute best shape I've ever seen for somebody of your age. The old man replied, yep, it comes from clean living. I know I live a good, clean spiritual life, and so the Lord shows me, he notices how I'm living faithfully for him. The doctor said, well, so that's why you think that your health is so good, is because it's a reward from God? And the old man said, well, yeah, the Lord blesses me with my good health, and God also shows me in other ways that he's pleased with how I'm living as a Christian. So the doctor said, well, that's great. Well, what other ways does God show you that he's pleased with your life? Well, Doc, if I didn't live a good, clean life, the Lord wouldn't turn the bathroom light on for me every time I get up in the middle of the night. Well, the doctor was a little concerned with that. He said, you mean when you get up in the middle of the night, the Lord himself turns the light on for you? Yep, the old man said, whenever I get up at night to go to the bathroom, the Lord turns the light on for me. Well, the doctor didn't say anything else to the man, but when the old man's wife came in for her checkup, he felt he would have a little bit of a talk with her about what her husband had said to him. Mrs. Johnson, I just want to let you know, ma'am, your husband is in absolutely perfect physical shape for his age. But I am a bit concerned, a little bit worried about his mental condition as he's aging. He told me that every night when he gets up, the Lord turns the light on for him. He said, what? Yes, ma'am. He said every night when he gets up to go to the bathroom, the Lord turns the light on for him. Aha! She exclaimed. So he's the one that's been peeing in the refrigerator. Very good. So hopefully the Lord doesn't turn the light on for you when you get up to go to the bathroom. All right. I'm glad y'all enjoyed those jokes, and I figured you'd like the third one the best. So just to kind of recap where we're at, last week we basically left with the so far the basic big idea of this. This is the closing chapters of David's life. And what we're seeing here is really a godly man who's not sinless, right? He's like us. He's very much like us. But God restores him, disciplines him, and preserves the covenant or the promises that he's made to David throughout all these things that we see David going through. And he ultimately teaches his people, David teaches his people that true leadership should be marked by mercy, justice, humility, and worship. And so ultimately, that's where David is at in his life. He's just defeated Absalom's rebellion against him, as we learned last week. And at this point, he's going to return back to Jerusalem, and that's where we're going to pick things up in our lesson this week. So hopefully we'll get to the finish line of this lesson. We'll see. If we don't, we don't. But we're going to try. But we're going to trace basically the movements of David, his return after that battle with Absalom, back to the kingship, effectively, right? And we're going to see how he begins to handle those people that he dealt with during Absalom's rebellion, right? I remember we know some people that cursed him and others that blessed him while he was fleeing from Absalom. And so we're going to see how he handles those different people that cursed and blessed him. And as you can see here, we're going to see all these different bullet points here are basically each slide that we're going to talk about. And the first one will be restoration. And so, who will read for him? We're not going to cover every single verse, but we do have quite a few verses to go through. So some of them, if this is too much, when I put it on the screen, if it's too small for you to read, just tell me and I'll read it. And I'll read it quickly so we get through it. So anybody want to try and tackle this, or you want me to read this one?
I'll do it.
You got it? All right.
Then it was told to Joab, behold, the king is weeping and mourns for Absolom. And the salvation that day was turned to mourning for all people, for the people heard it said that day, the king is grieved for his son. So the people stole away to enter into the city that day, as people who are dishonored steal away when they flee in battle. But as for the king, he wrapped his face up. Then the king cried out with a loud voice, "O my son Absolom, Absolom, my son, my son." Then Joab came to the house to the king and said, "Today you have
very harsh things that Joab's saying to David here, right? Basically saying, you're so grieved over your son, you would be happy if we were all dead and he was still alive. I don't know that I agree that he's that grieved. Sure, he's upset. He's lost his son. Who wouldn't be, right? But I think that Joab is being a little bit hyperbolic here, a little bit too harsh. But he is pointing out something very important, and that is, as a leader, you've got to still lead, right? Irregardless of what's going on. And that's kind of what's happening here is David is so upset over the loss of his son Absalom that he's engrossed by it. He's engulfed by it. And Joab recognizes that, right? And he's telling him that basically if you don't, take back the mantle here, take back the leadership role here, it's going to be worse for you. This is going to be the worst than it's ever been for you. Because the people aren't going to follow you. If they think that they've lost you as a leader because you're so more concerned about your dead son than you are about the people that were just risking their life for you, you're not going to have a kingdom to rule. So to an extent, Joab is correct in this. He was a little harsh in what he said, but the bottom line, his message is true, that David still has to lead. And we as Christians have to remember the same thing, that irregardless of what's going on in our life, no matter what the world or circumstances throw at us, and whatever sorrow or grief we may have, our duty to God requires us to consider others, right? To consider the people that God has put around us and consider the people that we are responsible for, if you will, as Christians, right? And so God often uses rough instruments, right? Joab here is a rough instrument. God often uses rough instruments to point things out for us, right? To show us truth. And here he does. He points out to David that irregardless of his sorrow and his upsetness from his son's death, he still has a job to do. He still is the king that's been put in place by God himself. And he has to be that king, right? So, a pastor can suffer, right? A father can mourn a child. A Christian can be brokenhearted, but you still have to be obedient. You still have to be obedient to God, irregardless of what's going on in your life. And I know each of us have probably been in situations where you've had something happen in your life, and it's really easy to use that or say, well, I'm gonna grieve rather than do such and such for God, or I'm going to whatever, rather than do what God would have you be doing at that moment in time. And we've got to be careful that we don't allow our grief to surpass our duty to God. And that's kind of what's going on here, starting to be what's going on here with David until Joab basically wakes him up from it. So we got to be faithful in any kind of conflict, any kind of thing going on as a leader. And look, we're going to talk later about the mighty men of David. All of us should be the mighty men of David for God, right? All of us should be able to say that we are leaders for God, right? The only thing holding you back from that is you, quite frankly. It's not God, it's you. And each of us should be willing to put aside those things in our life that need to be put aside sometimes so that we can do God's will, God's work, and be the mighty men or women that God wants us to be, each of us to be. It's really easy to get wrapped up in the world and go, well, with all this going on, I'm gonna put that off till next week or whatever, right? I've seen it 1,000 times, but you've got to understand that grief should never overtake your duty to God. So, on that note, when has grief tempted you to withdraw from responsibilities that God clearly assigned? Anybody want to tackle that one? I can tell you a really good example for me. Let me give you a good example. Last year, my father died the day of the wild game supper, literally, the day it happened. And yes, I was grieving my dad, the loss of my father, but I also had an obligation to God. And I had already committed to being there, to doing things, to what I had said I would do. And so I left my father's bed, and I went to where he had passed, and I went to the wild game supper that same day. There would be many people that would say, my father died today, so I can't be here. But your duty to God doesn't end just because the life of a loved one does. Your duty to God, therefore, should be more present in your mind. Because if that person was taken to heaven, as my father, I believe, was, you owe God more so than you even can ever imagine in that moment than any other moment. And so it's really easy to let the world throw things at you that you then use as an opportunity to walk away from God's duties that he has entrusted to you. And it's really that he's entrusted it to you. It's a gift, and we should treat it as such. Even though sometimes that gift comes at a time when it's not easy to fulfill, we still should, irregardless, right? So there's my example. Any other thoughts? Or any other examples you may have? No? All right. All right, good. We can move on. All right, so who read for me 8 through 15? And we'll see what happens next. Again, a lot of verses. How about I read this one? So the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told all the people, saying, "Behold, the king is sitting in the gate." Then all the people came before the king. Now Israel had fled, each to his tent. And that's important. Remember that. Israel had fled, each to his tent. And it happened that all the people were disputing throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and provided us escape from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled out of the land from Absalom. However, Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. So now, why are you silent about having the king return?" So this is Israel having a conversation with itself, effectively, okay? So now King David had sent to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, saying, "Speak to the elders of Judah," and Judah and Israel here are two different things. Keep that in mind as well. "Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to have the king to return to his house, while the word of all Israel has come to the king, even to his house? You are my brothers. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then should you be the last to have the king return? And say to Amasa, are you not my bone and flesh? May God do so to me and more also, if you will not be commander, I should say, of the army before me continually in the place of Joab." Thus he inclined the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man. So they sent word to the king, saying, "Return you and all your servants." The king then returned and came as far as the Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal in order to meet the king, to cause the king to pass over the Jordan. So what's going on here is, as I was telling you, notice here, now Israel had fled each to his tent. So after the death of Absalom, the nation of Israel was following Absalom, right? They're the ones that basically had put him in power and fought against David, right? Trying to overthrow David. Well, now they all fled to their tents, and then it happened all the people were disputing throughout the tribes of Israel. So then the 10 tribes, which the Bible here is calling Israel, keep that in mind. The 10 tribes there, the majority of the tribes, it's going to call Israel, but the tribe of Judah, it's going to separate out as Judah, right, in this moment. So basically, or 11 tribes, I should say, not 10. So basically, all these 11 tribes are disputing with each other on, well, hey, look, we were following Absalom. He's dead. So what are we going to do? Are we going to, ask David to come back as king or not, right? So they're arguing amongst themselves as a nation of what they should do. Yeah.
It almost sounds like when Hillary Clinton lost, these people were lost. They didn't know what to do.
Sure. And that's, look, these are fickle people. And much like we have a nation of fickle people now. And so they're unsure what to do, right? They tried to put somebody else in place of David, and now they see, and I want you to notice, they said, however, Absalom, whom we anointed over us.
Yeah.
Who anointed David?
God.
Right. So they recognize the fact that God has removed who they anointed. Right? Which is where this conflict comes from. Because you got some of them saying, look, we made a mistake, right? We should have never even went with Absalom. You got others saying, well, we did, so, I guess we got to live with what we've done. And then you've got David, who actually goes to his own tribe of Judah and says, so what? You guys are going to be the last people that are going to ask me to come back? I hear from, even to my house, I hear all this argument in the house of, or all these other tribes where they're arguing whether they should bring me back or not bring me back, and you guys haven't said a word, and you're the tribe I come from, right? So what, are you guys going to be the last to say anything about this? So basically, David is speaking out to his own tribe of Judah and saying, you guys should be not the last, but bone of my bone, you should be the first that calls me back to Israel. And then he goes to, and he says to Amasa, are you not my bone and flesh? May God say to me, do to me also and more if you're not the commander of my army in place of Joab. Well, Joab just killed his son. So he's trying to replace Joab. I get it, right? Joab didn't follow his orders. Do not harm the young man Absalom, remember? Joab did what Joab does. He kills people, right? And he doesn't care about it until after the fact. Then he worries about the aftermath of what he's done. And so David, Amasa, by the way, if you don't remember, was the commander of Absalom's army. So this is the enemy general that David is reaching out to and saying, look, I'll make you commander of my army in place of Joab. You need to be my commander in place of Joab. So he's effectively, he's trying to throw an olive branch, as we would say, right? He's trying to make peace, if you will, with the opposing army. And by doing that, he's reaching out to the opposing commander, right? Because he can see the turmoil of the nation of Israel and his own tribe of Judah in this moment. He's trying to bring some semblance of unity together. So he's reaching out to the commander Amasa. And that's kind of where he's leaving everything. If you come and return, I'll return. Or if you come and help, I'll return. So let's see what happens next. Who will read for me 16 through 21? That's only 5 verses. That's a little easier. Who will read that? You got it? Thank you, man.
Then Shimei, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. Now there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, with Ziba, the young man of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him. And they rushed to the Jordan before the king. Then they kept passing over the ford to cause the king's household to pass over, and to do what was good in his sight. And Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king as he was about to pass over the Jordan. So he said to the king, let not my lord consider me guilty, nor remember what your servant did wrong on the day when my lord the king went out from Jerusalem, so that the king would take it to heart. For your servant knows that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I have come today, the first of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said, should not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the anointed of Yahweh?
Very good. All right, so a couple things. Shimei, as we remember, he's the one that was throwing rocks at David, remember? When David was first leaving Israel, when Absalom had taken power, Shimei stood on the hill there and tossed rocks at him, called him names and all that, said you're bloodthirsty and all these different things he said about David. And at the time, Abishai, one of his men then had said, let me go kill him for you, right? David had told him, hold back. Maybe this is God has directed Shimei to do this, right? And if not, then perhaps God will have mercy on me as he sees me being persecuted by somebody else. So he doesn't have anything done to Shimei. Well, Shimei knows that David's now headed back to the kingdom. He's headed back to become king, right? He's about to cross over the river. So Shimei takes 1,000 men. Think about that. He takes 1,000 men with him to go and talk to David and say, look, I hope you're not going to hold this against me that I threw rocks at you, king. Don't worry about these 1,000 guys I got behind me, but I hope you're not going to hold that against me. I'm sorry. I sinned. I did wrong. I don't think he was being genuine, but who knows, right? It doesn't really lead us to know either way. But the fact that he brought 1,000 men with me leads me to believe I don't think he was truly genuine. Because why do you need 1,000 men to apologize? Honestly, that sounds like an army just in case David said no, right? Or in case David says, no, you are to die, right? And so basically Shimei's asking for mercy from David as he's returning back to Jerusalem. And his men, once again, are saying, no, you should end him, right? He obviously that wasn't God directing him. That was him directing himself to throw rocks at you. So David has to decide here. Is he going to forgive and forget or not forget? But is he going to forgive and let this go, or is he not, right? And should he, right? So Shimei's begging for mercy, right? And we're going to see several people come to David in this moment that we've seen in the past here, a few weeks of David's life, that are going to tell him either they were lied to about him or whatever. And Shimei here is asking for mercy. So, and as I have here written on the slide here, mercy is kingly, revenge is not. And in this moment, discernment is required. So, look, David easily could kill this man, right? Easily. He could say, no, I want him dead. But it takes more grace to show mercy than it does to avenge when you're wronged, right? Just like for us, it's really easy to take anger to heart and to fight back when you've been wronged. It's much harder to act in mercifulness to that person that's wronged you. And so obviously I'm kind of giving it away what David's going to do, but he's going to act in mercy towards Shimei, right? So how do you practice forgiveness without pretending to trust that your trust is instantly also restored? So how do you forgive somebody? How do you provide mercy like this for somebody without also making sure they understand that they still got to regain your trust, right? Because they should. Like in the case of Shimei here, just because if he's merciful to Shimei doesn't mean he should open himself up to be allowed, for him to throw more rocks at him, right? Same thing in us, right? As we're merciful to others, how do we do that at the same time, making sure that our forgiveness doesn't open ourselves up to be wronged again? You get where I'm coming from? Any thoughts? Yes.
Well, I noticed we've seen this kind of situation before.
Yes, many times.
In the previous verse, because of this day, this great day,
Right.
we're not going to do this kind of stuff.
Right.
And other victories and things like that, we're not going to be executing people.
Right.
Everybody's going to go out and celebrate those,
Right.
not with executions of things. At some point in the distant past, I had highlighted this very verse in my Bible, and I wrote down grace and forgiveness. So obviously, it's hammering a big lesson into our heads here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. What we'll see here in a moment, the reason David shows mercy is exactly what you said. There's kind of been a precedent set, right? In the past where when big victories like this for the Lord have occurred, that mercy is in order, right? As an honoring of God to be merciful to your enemy, right? And so David's done this in the past, and he's going to continue the precedent that's already been set here as well. Now, if this weren't a great big victory for God, right? Who knows? Maybe that would have changed things here. But you're absolutely correct in your observation of why David is showing mercy. Any other thoughts? All right, let's move forward. Good, we're making good time. Hopefully we'll get to that spot I really want to get to. All right, who will read 22 through 23? There's only 2 verses.
That's easy.
All right.
David said, "What have I to do with you, O sons of Zeruiah, that ye should this day be an adversary to me? Should any man be put to death in Israel today? Or do I not know that I am king over Israel today?" And the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." Thus the king swore to him.
Very good. So just as Wayne was just saying, basically David here is saying, look, why should I do something like this today? I'm king again. God has made me king again today. And this should be a day of celebration, not a day of killing people. And so he tells Shimei, I'm not going to kill you, right? He swears to him, I'm not going to kill you. Now, we will see that Shimei will get his just reward in the future at the hand of God, effectively, but not today. He'll live another day. And Shimei's own desire for Shimei will be what causes his death, and his inability to listen to. Here's the other thing, guys. It's a law, if you will, that as an Israelite, you're not to curse a king. You're not to curse a leader, for that matter, to say anything rude about him. And I know many of you remember when Jesus is in or Paul, actually, I should say, is in the sanctuary, and they've got him on trial, and he speaks out against the high priest that has him slapped, right? And then they say, well, you're cursing him, and he says, well, I didn't know he was a high priest. which who would if he just had him slap you? But anyway, same thing here, right? It's a capital offense to curse a leader. You could be put to death for that, which is why Abishai is calling out for the death of Shimei here, right? So truly, not only is this just an affront to David, but rightfully, according to the commandments and the law that they were under, he should have died. Yes.
Well, wasn't it worse than him throwing rocks at the king, than cursing him?
What's that, sorry?
Him throwing rocks at King David. Isn't that more a serious crime than cursing him?
Either one would have been punishable by death.
Yeah, why didn't they, do something when he was throwing rocks?
Either one would have been punishable by death. So him saying, David, you are a scumbag, was punishable by death.
Yeah.
Irregardless, the rocks just enhance the crime, if you will. But yeah, just even the speaking out against a leader in of itself, according to Deuteronomy, is punishable by death.
We could compare that to today's time. Years ago, in my time when I was growing up, you had respect to the leaders, the leaders of the country. Sure. Nowadays, they call them all kinds of names and everything.
Absolutely.
We see that disrespect and nothing,
absolutely,
no consequences for it anymore.
Which is it, and look, as Christians, irregardless of whether from a political standpoint, right? I realize there are different people have different politics. People, are on different different ideas of who's right, who's wrong. That doesn't change what you just said, that we should have respect for all people, right? Mm-hmm. Especially those that are in government, irregardless of whether we agree with what they're doing or not. Right. We should still give them the modicum of respect as a Christian that they
have to
deserve.
understand they were God has put them in that position.
There you go.
And even in the scriptures, Jesus tells us,
yes,
to obey the leaders. I mean,
yes,
to a certain point, they go,
yeah.
past the commandments.
As long as they're not
yes.
asking you to disobey the Lord.
Exactly.
Sure. Absolutely. And we've got to be careful that we uphold that for several reasons, but at the very least of which is because it's God's word, right? That's what he says, is we are to honor the leaders that he's placed above us. And you're absolutely right in that. I know it's easy to think, well, we elected them, they elected them. God put them there, right? And so because God's put them there, they should have our respect.
Yes.
As if, because look, when you question them, when you do the negative stuff, you're literally questioning God. And I don't ever want to be in that position where I question God. Yes.
Can you expound a little bit on how this mercy that was given to given to David's enemy is different than the mercy that David kind of showed with his son, Absolom, when he did the wrong thing? How is this mercy valiant or kingly, and the other mercy was not?
Well, two things. One, the precedent that's set here as he is retaking the throne. Again, this is a day of celebration because God's God's will has been done, right? And there has been a precedent set by both Saul and David, for that matter, in the past of when something like this, a day of national pride for what God is doing, you don't put somebody to death that day, right? So that's one. The other side of it too is with what the difference between these two men is Absalom didn't curse David. He didn't curse him. He just said, I'm taking over the kingship, right? It's two different things. And I realize that there's a very slight distinction there, but that's the truth. He didn't curse him. He didn't call him names. He didn't throw rocks at him. He did try to take his kingship, right? He tried to take the kingdom from him.
He wanted to kill him too, didn't he, Charles?
What's that?
He wanted to kill him also, didn't he?
Yeah, he ultimately was gonna usurp him, right? Which is why he met the death that he met, and it was okay. But David should have not, and we've discussed this before, David should have not handled the case of Absalom himself. Deuteronomy tells us that he should have turned that over to the priests, and that's not what he did, right? Because he was too close, right? That's his son. Whereas here, Shemaiah is not his son. And so there's a couple things going on here, but hopefully that answers your question. One, the crimes of these two men are different. And two, Shemaiah is not his son. And three, it's a day of celebration. And that's a lot of why. If it weren't for it being a day of celebration, he would be dead. I'm pretty sure David would have enacted justice on him, as he's done in the past with others, right? Like in the case of Saul, the man that brought the crown of Saul to him. And he said, who are you to raise your hand to the anointed of God, right? And so Shemaiah has done the same. He's raised his hand against the anointed of God. So I would think that it weren't for this being the day that it was, and Shemaiah came to him literally the right day, right? He would have probably enacted it. Because we'll see later, hopefully we get to it, we'll see later that he actually gives instructions to his son to deal with Shemaiah, to bring justice to Shemaiah, and however God leads Solomon to do that, right? So David's not going to let him off the hook, so to speak, fully. He's letting him off today, right? But he also knows Shemaiah is a man that's going to step on it again. He's going to mess himself up. And so that's why he tells Solomon, you do what you think is best and hold him accountable in the future. Yes?
When I look at this, the difference in the two is the anointing of God. David was anointed, so he knew whatever he did or however he conducted, he was going to be held accountable by God.
Right.
But Absolom, he was appointed by man. God didn't anoint him to be king.
Right. Right.
So David can look at that and say, you know, this is just the foolishness of men, basically, and I should not be so harsh on them like God would judge me. So I think that's kind of the distinction.
Sure. Yeah, the crimes are different, right? And even the subject of who's exactly, you're right, exactly.
When Jesus said they know not what they do. You know,
Sure.
Same kind of thing.
Sure. Very good. All right. So, 24 through 30. All right, this one's long, and I'm going to read it because it's big, all right? Now, Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, had come down to meet the king, and he had not done anything for his feet, nor done anything for his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed until the day he came home in peace. Now, it happened when he came from Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? So he answered, O my lord the king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself that I may ride on it and go with the king, because your servant is lame. Moreover, he has slandered your servant to the Lord my king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your sight. For all my father's household was nothing but men worthy of death before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who ate at your own table. What right do I have that I should complain any more to the king? So the king said to him, why do you still speak of your affairs? I have decided, you and Ziba shall divide the land. And Mephibosheth said to the king, let him even take it all, since my lord the king has come in peace to his own house. So a few things here, right? David is, and look, it's really easy because we we know the truth, right? We know the truth. So it's easy for us to judge what David's doing here as, well, he should have held Ziba responsible and let, Mephibosheth have back all the property, right? Because if we recall, during the time that when David was leaving, right before Shimei started throwing rocks at him, Ziba came with, provisions, remember, to David and said, look, I brought all this stuff for you. And Mephibosheth, he wouldn't come. He's cursing you and saying that you're getting what you deserve. Remember? Ziba was lying. Right? He wasn't telling the truth. We know that, right? David doesn't. David doesn't know that. He doesn't have the benefit of a Bible that we can look through and read ahead, right? To see what really happened in his own life. We do, right? And so it's very easy for us to look at this and go, well, David should have very much told Ziba, you're a bum, you lied to me, all that property I just turned over to you, you don't get, right? Instead, David is doing the smart thing here. Because he can't determine right now who is in the right, who is in the wrong, he's just going to do the least amount of harm to both. Does that make sense? So he's going to split 50-50 between these two men, and he's not going to punish either man for what ultimately is Ziba's lies. Now, again, David is going to let God have justice here, right? So he's going to trust that God will work out the detail of who deserves punishment and who doesn't. And he's not going to be the man that metes out the justice, right? So and we should remember this for ourselves. When you don't know who's guilty, who's not guilty, let God sort it out, right? You do what is going to do the least amount of harm for those people, right? Because I know we've each found ourselves in that situation where you got two different people telling you things, and one of them's got to be lying. One of them's got to be lying, right? You know one has to be lying, but you can't determine which of those it is, right? So the best thing you can do is what David does here, and that is to do the least amount of harm to both, right? And let God sort out who deserves justice in that moment, right? And that's basically what David is doing here. Now look, the evidence even here shows that Mephibosheth is truly he's upset, right? He didn't do anything for his feet, his hair, his clothes, any of that. In other words, the guy's probably got a beard, looks pretty nasty right now, and scruffy. He hadn't taken a bath in months, right? And he did that as protest for David being gone, right? As support of David. And so David surely sees this and recognizes this. But again, he still can't tell who's telling him the truth, for sure. So, so he's doing what's least likely to cause harm to both, right?
Hey, Charles.
Yes.
It's crazy. It reminds me, I think it was Solomon.
Exactly.
When the two women
Yep.
claimed that it was their baby, and he said, I'm going to
Give
divide
me,
down the
yep.
middle.
Give me a sword. Yep.
Yeah. And there was one of them was lying, one of them was telling the truth.
Absolutely.
It just reminded me of that story.
Yeah, it's sometimes your wisdom can be. It's better to have wisdom than it is to have immediate answers, right? And good example of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, which is his son. Much of where he learned from probably was dad. All right, who read for me 31 through 36? We'll see who Barzillai is and what's going to happen with him. Thank you.
Now Barzillai the Gileadite had come down from Rogelim, and he passed over the Jordan with the king in order to send him off over the Jordan. Now Barzillai was very old, being 80 years old, and he had sustained the king while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man. And the king said to Barzillai, "You pass over with me, and I will sustain the king of Jerusalem with me." But Barzillai said to the king, "How long have I yet to live, that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am now 80 years old. Can I know between good and bad? Or can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Or can I hear any more the voice of singing men and women? Why then should your servant be an added burden to my lord the king? Your servant would merely pass over the Jordan with the king. Why should the king compensate me with this reward?"
Very good. So a couple things. Barzillai here was gracious to David. During the entire time David's been away from the kingdom, Barzillai, who is, from what we see here, a pretty rich man, took care of David, took care of his needs, helped him, right? Gave him provision, him and his men, and provided for him, right? And so David wants to repay the favor, right? Now that he's returned the resources of the king, he wants to repay the favor. So he tells Barzillai, "Come with me, come back to the kingdom with me, and I will take care of you from there on out," right? And Barzillai says, "Look, I'm old. That's great. That's nice of you to want to do that for me, and I appreciate it. But I'm old. I couldn't really enjoy all the great things you could do for me. I'd rather you give this to my son," which is who he's telling him David should do this for, right? So he says, instead of me, do it for my son, and treat him as you would treat me, right? And so David does, right? And that's something I want to mention here. The Bible's pretty clear that to whom much is given, much is required, right? And so Barzillai is a wealthy man, but he also, do you notice, he had no problem with using a mass amount of his wealth to support the king when he was away from Jerusalem, right? That couldn't have been cheap, guys. He probably spent a good bit, if not most, of his wealth, which is why David is so quick to want to return. Think about this. This is the first thing he does. The first person he wants to reward is this man. Does that tell you how important he was to David during this time? Right? Again, because Barzillai has been blessed by God, he has returned to God the use of that blessing, right? By using it for God's purpose. Same thing we should do. When we are provided for by God, the very first thing we should be thinking about is, how do I steward that money, steward that blessing for God, right? How do I return that to have the most impact for God, right? And so that's what Barzillai did here with David, and in turn, why David is wanting to reward him. And look, also, Barzillai's smart. He's not going to waste on himself these pleasures as well. So he says, pass, instead of me, give this to my son, which hopefully, presumably means his son will be a great man that will do the same and pass on that blessing to others in God's, as God wills it, right? All right, 37 through 40, I'm going to read this one. Please let your servant return that I may die in my own city. And this is still Barzillai. Please let your servant return that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and my mother. However, here's your servant Chimham, his son. Let him pass over with my lord the king and do for him what is good in your sight. So the king answered him, Chimham shall pass over with me, and I will do for him what is good in your sight, and whatever you require of me, I will do for you. Then all the people passed over the Jordan, the king passed over too. Then the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his place. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Chimham went with him. And all the people of Judah and also half the people of Israel accompanied the king. Notice this, all the people of Judah, half the people of Israel. So still the nation of Israel, most of the tribes are wishy-washy. They're not sure what they want to do, right? All right, so who will read for me 41 through 43? We're making good time. We might get to the last. Yes.
And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why had our brothers, the men of Judah, stolen you away and caused the king and his household and all David's men with him to pass over the Jordan? Then all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, because the king is a close relative to us. Why then are you angry about this matter? Have we eaten at all the king's expense, or has anything been taken for us? But the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, we have 10 parts in the king. Therefore we also have more claim on David than you. Why then did you treat us with contempt? Was it not our word first to have our king return? Yet the words of the men of Judah were harsher than the words of the men of Israel.
Very good. So, all right. So look, they're passing over, right? And as you notice in that last verse, it tells us that half the nation of Israel is following David and the other half still isn't, right? Mm-hmm. And Judah in full is. Well, the men of Israel came to the king, and all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, why has Judah stolen you away, right? And saying, why is it you're following them? Why is it they have influence, right? And we don't, effectively, right? They're saying we should be part of this decision of you returning to the kingdom or not. And yet it seems as though Judah is making all the decisions for the entire nation here, right? Because not the whole nation of Israel is right now behind David, right? Half are, half aren't. And effectively, they're saying the half that isn't is saying, why is it you guys get to make this decision? Why are we not part of it, right? And they're making a good point, except for the fact that, there's still more on the side of David than there are now on the side of them, right? Because again, you got all the tribe of Judah, half of Israel, right? So he still has the majority. But they're saying, look, just because you are his home tribe doesn't mean you should have more influence than us. We have 10 parts in David. They're saying 10 tribes, effectively, right? They're saying we have 10 tribes in the house of Israel, so we should have more say than your one tribe of Judah, right? David, if you recall, during the entire time he was king, tried to unite the entire nation. Not once did he separate them as the tribe of Judah or Israel, right? Not once. He tried to do the opposite. He tried to bring them all together and treat them all as one nation. And I know we studied that several times where he did different things for that purpose. And yet right now what's happening is this division has sprung up again, right? Basically because of Absolom, for all intent and purposes, and also partially because of the circumstances with David even himself going to Judah and saying, why is it you guys are the last to call me back home? You're my own flesh and blood. You're my own tribe, right? Why are you guys the last? So to an extent, David kind of prompted a bit of this, right? But this whole time, David has tried to bring the whole country together up until now. And these men in Israel are effectively saying, we don't believe that we have enough say in what's going on here. This is not fair, right? And so, yeah, they kind of made their own bed when they backed Absalom, right? But they don't want to recognize that. They think that doesn't matter. They should still have equal say in whether or not David should come back to rule, right? So that's what's going on there, an argument amongst them. All right. And this leads to dissent, right? As each time we see this, right, where there's division within Israel, it leads to dissent. That's what led to Absalom's rise, right? Well, we're about to see another man named Sheba that he sees this argument going on, and half of Israel saying, look, we're not being given, equal opportunity here to make decisions about whether David comes back as king. He sees this happening, and so he decides he's going to take it amongst himself to offer up another rebellion. So I'll read this one. Now a vile fellow happened to be there whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a Benjaminite, and he blew the trumpet and said, we have no portion in David, nor do we have an inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his tents, O Israel. So all the men of Israel went up from following David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. So even the ones that had just said, we're with you, David, now once again, they're fickle and they go, oh, wait, new guy, let's follow him, right? Sad. But this, right, why are we not part of the decision? Right, and then they're so quickly able to just flee from David's side again, right? So, but the men of Judah clung to their king from the Jordan even to Jerusalem. So all the men of Judah stayed with David and said, no, we're not switching sides, irregardless. Then David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women, the concubines, who he had left to keep the house, and he placed them under guard and provided them with sustenance, but did not go into them. He didn't have relation with them. So they were shut up until the day of their death, living as widows. Then the king said to Amasa, call out the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and you yourself stand here. So Amasa went to call out the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the set time which he had appointed him. All right, a few things going on here. So first of all, Sheba, right, he says, to your tents, right? We have no portion in David. And so all of Israel follows him, right? And then David comes to Jerusalem, comes back to the capital, right? And he takes the concubines that have been defiled by Absalom, and he sets them up as widows, right? He sets them with their own house. They would have been well taken care of, I'm sure. And he has their own guard and everything now, right? And they lived as widows until their death. Then he says to Amasa, which is, again, that commander of the army that was against him, that was over Absalom's army, and he tells him, all right, call out the men of Judah for me within 3 days, and you yourself stand here. So he's saying, okay, I want you to be the commander of my army, of the men of Judah, right, against this Sheba guy now, right? And so Amasa goes to call out the men of Judah, but he delayed longer than the set time which he had appointed him. Think about that. So David has decided he doesn't want Joab being the leader of his army because Joab can't follow instructions really well. He killed his son when he told him not to. And so he's calling out this guy that he thought he might be able to throw an olive branch to and get him to now, follow David. And he says, all right, I want you to lead my army. Here in 3 days, I want you to have them ready, basically, right? But he doesn't do that, right? Amasa doesn't have them ready in that 3 days. So what's that lead you to believe? Leads me and many scholars to believe that Amasa isn't really on David's side, right? Now, some say, well, maybe he just didn't have control of the men, or maybe he didn't this, that. We're going to see some other evidence here in a minute that says the opposite of that this is purposeful, that Amasa could have, brought them, because again, the men of Judah are on David's side, right? That's what we just heard. So why is it he can't get them together in 3 days? Maybe he's delaying for another reason, right? Think about that. So, and there's further evidence we'll see in a minute. But, and David's going to recognize this. He's going to see that perhaps he's thrown this olive branch to Amasa, and maybe it's not what he needs to do. And you'll see what he does in return. All right, long one. I'm going to read it. And David said to Abishai, now Now Sheba, the son of Bichri, will do us more harm than Absalom. Take your Lord's servant and pursue him, lest he find for himself fortified cities and deliver himself from our sight. So Joab's men pursued him along with the Cherethites and the Pelethites and all the mighty men, and they went on from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. They were at the large stone which is in Gibeon, and Amasa came to meet them. Now Joab was dressed in his military attire, and over it was a belt with a sword in its sheath fastened at his waist. And as he came out, it fell out. Then Joab said to Amasa, "Is it well with you, my brother?" And Joab took Amasa by the beard with his right hand to kiss him. But Amasa was not on guard against the sword which was in Joab's hand. So he struck him in the belly with it and poured out his inward parts on the ground. And he did not strike him again, and he died. Then Joab and Abishai, his brother, pursued Sheba, the son of Bichri. Now there stood by him one of Joab's young men and said, "Whoever delights in Joab and whoever is for David, let him follow Joab." But Amasa lay wallowing in his blood in the middle of the highway. And the man saw that all the people stood still. So he removed Amasa from the highway into the field and threw a garment over him. When he saw everyone who came by him stood still. All right, again, a few things happening here. So David says to Abishai, he realizes Amasa may not be on his side truly. So he says to Abishai, all right, look, you take the men and pursue after Sheba, right? Because obviously Amasa didn't, right? And so Joab goes with him, right, as well, obviously. And Amasa meets them, right? Notice that. He meets them as they're leading the men that he was supposed to gather up, remember? Why is he doing that? So what Joab does, he stabs him, he kills him. But he doesn't kill him right away. He gets him in the stomach, which is a hard death, guys. It's a very hard death. He would have lasted for probably an hour and would have died a very gruesome, horrifying death. And Joab didn't do that accidentally, right? Because it says he didn't strike him again. He knew what he was doing, and he left him there to wallow in his own blood and die as the men passed by, right? That's a message from Joab to these men. This is your fate if you betray David, right? Because Amasa effectively was doing that, betraying David. So Joab's telling the men as they pass by, there's your fate if you betray David. Well, one guy notices, hey, look, some of them are stopping and it's scaring them so bad they ain't even continuing on. So he takes Amasa's body and puts it in the field and covers over it, right? But the men follow, right? So they recognize that, yeah, it's probably not a good death that Amasa's going through, and I don't want to be part of that, so I'm going to follow David, right? So Joab effectively is taking control again as commander of the army, right? Which is what he does. All right, kind of out of time, but I'm going to read this one. And as soon as he was removed from the highway, all the men passed on after Joab to pursue Sheba, the son of Bichri. Now he went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, even Beth-Makkah, and all the Berathites, and they were assembled and also came after him. So they came and besieged him at Abel Beth-Makkah, and they cast up a siege ramp against the city, and it stood by the rampart. And all the people who were there with Joab were wreaking destruction in order to cause the wall to fall. Then a wise woman called from the city, "Hear, hear, please tell Joab, draw near that I may speak with you." And so he drew near to her. And the woman said, "Are you Joab?" And he answered, "I am." Then she said to him, "Listen to the words of your maidservant." And he answered, "I'm listening." Then she spoke, saying, "Formerly they used to speak in this way, saying, they will surely ask advice at Abel, and thus they ended the dispute. I am of those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. You are seeking to put to death a city, even a mother in Israel. Why would you swallow up the inheritance of Yahweh?" So they follow Sheba all around several different towns. He finally ends up in this town. This old woman comes to the gate and says, "Look, we don't want to die. We're loyal servants of David. This guy just happened to run into our city, and you're out here with siege weapons. You're about to destroy the whole city for one man," right? She's saying, it used to be we could talk about stuff. You didn't just come in guns blazing, so to speak, right? And so she's saying, can we talk? Why would you kill all of us for this one man? And so Joab answers her and says, "Far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. Such is not the case. But a man from the hill country of Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bichri by name, has lifted up his hand against King David. Give him over alone, and I will go from your city." And the woman said to Joab, behold, his head will be thrown down to you over the wall. Then the woman came to all the people in her wisdom and cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it over to Joab. So he blew the trumpet, and they were scattered from the city, each to his tent. Joab also returned to the city at Jerusalem. Now Joab was over the whole army of Israel, and Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and Adoram was over the forced labor, and Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, was the recorder. And Sheba was scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were priests, and Ira the Jairite was also a priest to David. So they throw out his head, right? So that they won't destroy the whole city. They throw out the head of Sheba to Joab. Joab now has effectively taken back control of the army of David, and I guess the rebellion's over, right? For all intents and purposes. And so they all go back to their place, each to his own tent, and Joab and David return to the city of Jerusalem, and they reinstate all the different leaders, right? This is the same structure that he had before, by the way. The only difference is he added Ahilud as the recorder, and who was it? Adoram over the forced labor. The rest of the appointments are exactly the same as when he first took the kingship, right? All right, so we're out of time. We didn't get to where I wanted to, but that's all right. We'll get to it next week for sure. And you'll learn about the, you'll see. It'll be fun. All right, so prayer requests. Any prayer requests for this week? No? Yes, sir. Pray for a happy new year, yeah. Pray for a safe new year. Look, there's a lot of temptations in our world, right? And this new year is not going to be any exception. There will be temptations for all of us as Christians to do what the rest of the world is doing. And that's to go out and get drunk and act foolish, right? And to do things that are not what a Christian should do. And so I pray, my prayer is that each of you will be not tempted by those temptations of the world, and that you will instead devote your day to God. And I know, look, in our world today, that's hard to do because we're surrounded. But we're to be not of this world. We're to be different, right? And I hope each of you are trying to be different each day. Very good, though. Any others? Yes.
Unsaved children and family members.
Very good, yeah. Definitely keep everyone that you know is lacking the Lord in their life in your prayers. And our loved ones, too. Look, again, even that Satan will use against you. And look, there are people in my family I love dearly that I know are unsaved. And I also know that this is not an accident, if you will, right? And Jesus said, if you love your mother or father or family before me, then, he wants you to love him first, right? And so we should all do that as well. And by loving him, that also means that we have to recognize those family members that aren't saved. We should be pointing them to God, not just excusing their failure to recognize the truth. All right, very good. Any others? Yes.
Traveling mercies for my daughter, her husband has a returned home, and traveling mercies for Anne coming back from a funeral in Columbia, and wisdom for Annika in this upcoming year, just facing some changes with employment and her health.
Very good. And which daughter for travel mercies? You didn't say the name.
Erica and CJ.
Okay.
And then Aaron.
Okay, very good. All right, Eric and CJ for travel mercies, Aaron, and then Annika for wisdom. Very good. Any more? Yes.
Yeah, this may be a selfish prayer from a craggy old man. Pray that South Carolina would pass a law to get rid of these bloody fireworks. I'm so sick and tired. Sorry.
That's all right.
Chip.
I do
It
have
scares
one.
my dogs to death.
I do have one prayer as well. Charles, I know you guys know Charles normally sits at the back of the class. He's still out with his surgery and all that. He also had a car accident just this last week, so he's okay. But keep him in your prayers as well. He'll hopefully be back next week. He's also said he'll do his testimony for us. So hopefully he'll do that, if not next week, the week after. All right, any more?
I just have one note after the prayer. I just want to tell everybody this one little thing.
Sure. All right, we'll say prayer and we'll end class. You got it? Thank you.
Father, we thank you for so much today. We thank you for
Yes.
the blessing of being able to gather freely in worship and study. We thank you for your perfect word to us. Feed it to us every day, Father. Let us feed from that and learn, and it improves our lives, and we thank you for that, Father. We thank you for the lesson you gave us today. We thank you for your blessing on Charles, and we ask your blessing upon our pastor. Give us ears to hear your message through him, and we thank you for both of them, Father. Bless us as we go. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 And one note, I saw a picture on the internet this week. There was a couch hanging from a tree. Somebody had was in his truck and he was driving home and got caught in his overhanging tree limb.
Wow.
And I called it Absolom's tree.
Very good. All right, so next week, the threshing floor of Aruna. You'll know what that is and why it's significant. God bless you all.